Hi, and welcome to another episode of the FM Channel podcast. I'm Claudio, I'm your host, and one of the co-owners of Alex Young Recruitment as well. And today I'm really excited because I've managed to get Steve McGregor invited into the studio, I guess. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hi, Claudio. Good to see you again. Hope you're well.
Yeah, I am. Thank you for coming on. We've tried to. You're a busy man. I've been trying to pin you down for a good few weeks now. So I'm quite excited about this chat, and we've worked together as well in the past, and so as a client. So, as a bit of an intro to anybody who hasn't listened before, the FM Channel podcast is where I interview FM industry leaders and discuss how they got into the FM sector and how they got to where they are today, and share their journey, because everyone's journey is a bit different. And so that's what we're going to do with Steve today. So before we delve into how you started, Steve, can you just give us a quick intro as to who you work for now and what you do, please?
Hi, I'm Steve McGregor. So thanks for the initial intro, Claudio. So I'm Managing Director of DMA. So we're a 220-year-old property service company based in Kent. Most of the volume of business that we deliver is customers in London and the southeast, but we're gradually creating a national footprint with some new service products that we're developing. So it's a privately owned, privately funded, very long-standing business. I've been able to be a contributing part of how we've digitally transformed our business, and I've been in the sector for 45 years. And in some ways, somewhat disappointingly on occasion, there are some things that just haven't changed. And the reality is that they're not easy to change. So I'm on the senior leadership team within DMA, and we're looking to leverage the expertise and our technical know-how to fundamentally make buildings work better and to change the UK maintenance industry for good.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And you just mentioned that you've been in the industry for 45 years. So you've been around, which is brilliant, because obviously I had a quick look on your LinkedIn, and it kind of goes back to Compass, NG, and DMA where you are now. So let's go back to the beginning. How did you get into the FM sector? Did you just fall into it? Did you want to be in it? Where did it start for you?
It wasn't called the FM industry when I started out 45 years ago. So I started a trade apprenticeship. But what inspired me to become involved in engineering initially was my dad.
Right.
So my dad was in the military for 23 years, but he was a Royal Engineer.
Okay.
So my dad was involved in military engineering, sort of taking stuff to bits and putting it back together again, and often ending up with more bolts and nuts left and wondering where they all should have gone when you put it back together again. But so it was the inspiration from Dad that inspired me initially to be interested in engineering. So I was able to, in fact, I was the last apprenticeship intake at Her Majesty's Naval Base at Chatham.
Right.
So we were part of 15, the very last 15 that was taken on in September 1980 into the dockyard at Chatham. And I began an electrical student apprenticeship, which was 4 years. It was indentured by the then Home Secretary, so it was a contract that we had. So I followed electrical engineering. They put me through sort of day release at college, so ONC, HNC in electrical engineering.
Right. Okay.
And what I find looking back now after completing the apprenticeship, in an environment where we're working on submarines and warships and their establishments, the buildings, within the naval base and what have you.
Yeah.
It's actually completing an apprenticeship purely gave you the confidence and the wherewithal to continue learning on your own.
Right.
That's what I reflect back on now. But that's how I got into it. I still love it.
And how long were you in the Navy for then?
No, so I wasn't in the Navy. I was actually part of the MOD.
Right.
So
Okay.
The Ministry of Defence, Naval, but I was effectively a civil servant.
Right. Okay.
So that was probably about 5 years. 4 years was the apprenticeship. By the time I left, it was about 5 years.
Yeah.
Because my dad was military. I spent 17 years of my life living abroad, so I've always loved to travel.
Okay.
So I got involved in all manner of stuff following my apprenticeship. I got involved in design, so designing M&E services for large consultancies, small consultancies, doing big industrial kitchens in London for the likes of the Savoy and Claridge's, massive, great big, service intense activities. A number of contractors, AMEC, still doing what gradually started to be called FM at that time. And then there was an opportunity for me to take a service product idea to Compass Group. And if I'm honest with you, I knew that Compass were big at that time. I didn't realize quite how big. I mean, they were fundamentally a hospitality business, but they had quite an element of complementary soft services. So I took an idea to them to actually build what we called an integrated FM, like a total FM solution. So we ended up creating a solution within Compass that took them from the kitchen to the boiler house. So it was a fully, I'm pretty certain that we were the forerunners for what IFM actually became today.
Yeah.
And that was back in the kind of early 2000s. And we won contracts with British Sugar and British Energy and what have you. So, we took that business from sort of 15, 20 million to over 200 million in just over 5.5 years. So, it was very exciting. I was then able to move from a UK role within Compass to effectively deliver the same opportunity for growth globally. So I became the International Business Development Director for Compass Group. I was there for almost 12 years. But that satisfied my lust for travel.
I was going to say that must have been a great opportunity for you with enjoying the travel.
I spent lots of time meeting different cultures, colleagues. So I had a team of probably about 100 people, around the globe, as it were. But spent lots of time in the US, South America, Far East.
Where was the best country or most interesting place that you worked during that time?
I always enjoyed working in the US. Whilst we loosely share a language, things are very different. But I think I probably enjoyed Far East more, I think.
Yeah.
I probably spent time there as a kid. So, I love Singapore, Hong Kong, and what have you. They're quite hustling, bustling places. But if I'm really honest with you as well, with all of the places that I've been, I still love the UK. I love being in London. I love being in the UK. So I still love to travel. But, I'm very comfortable being in the UK.
Brilliant. So you've been in the industry a long time. You've worked for these companies. I mean, before you went to Compass and approached them with this idea of IFM, were you still on? You weren't still on the tools at that point, though, were you?
No, that's a good question, actually.
At what point did you kind of make the transition from the tools to realise that there's an opportunity to do IFM, and then go to Compass and go, got this idea? In between being that apprentice and Compass, how did you kind of progress? What were the kind of key points?
I came off the tools pretty quickly, if I'm honest with you.
Okay.
I wasn't bad at it, but I wasn't great. That's it.
Right.
I got all of the qualifications and what have you. So I pretty much came off the tools probably within a couple of years of completing my apprenticeship.
Okay.
I suppose to some extent, without being arrogant, I've always had a little bit of a gist for the gab. I'm never uncomfortable talking to people.
Yeah.
I think that came from being a service family. So, I was moved around every 2-3 years. So you're constantly making new friends and what have you.
Yeah.
I realized that I can have an impact talking to people. So I quite quickly got involved in business development and how I could sell the activities of the companies.
Right, okay.
And that first started off with consultancy. So when I left my apprenticeship, I got involved with a specialist kitchen design company, big commercial kitchens. I mentioned the Savoy, Claridge's, Ritz Oil. So these were huge hospitality installations. So that took me into consultancy. And then when I was 24, with a good friend of mine, we actually set up our own design consultancy, a company called GWP Associate. That was for probably 7 or 8 years. And then I was probably 7 or 8 years younger than Clive at the time when we set up the business. So I think my wanderlust and ambition, it gradually became more of a difference between us as individuals. So I decided that rather than disrupt the business, it was probably time for me to go and pursue something else. So I sold my interest in that business to Clive, which still runs. And I went to companies like AVEC and just started getting involved in the management of internal teams that delivered or supply chain management. So I quite quickly moved off the tools, got involved in consultancy, and then got involved in business development, solution, general management around, some pretty big deals. And, we secured deals with, which I'm still extremely proud of, with Shell Real Estate, which, these were $300-400 million a year deal, 40, 50 countries. So we had a really good time as well. And I met some wonderfully talented people along the way. So everything I've ever achieved in the 45 years so far, it's been through people giving me chats and, leveraging the talent of others.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, so that takes me through to kind of that where you became. So you're effectively a salesman, right? At heart.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
So sell or die, isn't it?
Yeah. So what? Because you clearly still love it, and there's obviously a passion there. When I've spoken to you in the past few years, when we recruited for you as well, what still drives you 45 years after starting the journey into the maintenance engineering sector? What still drives you today?
If I looked at it from a very personal perspective, I suppose to some extent I'll be 63 at the end of this year. I have as much passion for this sector now as I can ever recall. And I think the personal thing that drives me is being part of something at DMA that I absolutely know is going to make the industry a better place by the time I leave. And that's a very personal dimension to it. If I look at the kind of more sort of business orientated stuff that we're doing at the moment, we've got some genuinely gifted people in DMA. We've got, a leadership team in both experience and capability that outstrip where we are in terms of our current size and what have you. But that's an indicator of where we're heading, not where we are. So that's an inspiration that we've already achieved so much by properly embracing technology into what we do. So, in the last 6-7 years, we've completely digitally transformed our business. So all of our processes are automated. And if we look back over that sort of 7-year time frame now, our business is now twice as efficient overall as it was 7 years ago, which is huge. So to some extent, we're our own worst critics or our own most challenging critics, because we're constantly looking forward and seeing the leadership team to where we're headed. And maybe sometimes we're a little bit guilty of not looking in the rearview mirror and actually thinking, what have we actually already achieved? So we've been doing that a little bit more regularly as a team as well, and we've come an awful long way. And we're going to be releasing some really unique and very smart stuff very soon. And the transformation for that was engaging our CTO, Andy Cook, who didn't come from the FM sector, he came from the finance sector. And he's created a platform for us. I remember not long after he joined, he said, look, because we've been using technology, the widely available CAFM systems in the marketplace for 25 years. But they never quite gave us what we were looking for, to have this end-to-end sort of digital transparency around our business. And it was all about making us better and delivering better service to customers, really. So he said, look, we can go out and buy the proprietary stuff that's already available, I can stitch it together to create an ecosystem that would make it better. So the sum of the part, would be better than any individual parts of it. Or we build our own, and that's exactly what we've done. So our competitors and what have you might say, you just built another CAFM system. It was far more. When our finalists in IWFN's Impact Award this year, we're getting increasing recognition that we're a change maker.
Brilliant.
We've been confirmed as the most innovative and disruptive M&E player in the UK today. So gradually, we're getting a voice, that's disproportionate to our current scale. So that's what inspires me. So
excellent.
We're going to leave the industry in a better place, but we've still got so much to achieve.
That's brilliant. No, you've spoken to me before about your the software that you guys have invested in, and that's right. Yeah, brilliant. And so you mentioned at the very beginning of our chat that you've been in the industry for 45 years. I know I keep saying that, but you said that there's a lot that hasn't changed as well. What hasn't changed, and do you think it will?
First off, yes, I do. I genuinely believe it changed, and it will, because it has to.
Yeah.
I think if I look at the marketplace today, really, I'm talking M&E. Let me make that clear for you and the audience here. Talking about M&E is that, broadly speaking, there's not very much. There's little differentiation in the marketplace, other than scale and maybe the PPE that the companies, where everyone approaches, broadly speaking, in the same way.
Okay.
Bizria ran an independent survey for about 15 years ago, 10 common KPIs that were fundamentally telling the M&E industry that, your customers are dissatisfied.
Right.
And that was 15 consecutive years. And between 50 and 80% of customers were dissatisfied with what they were getting against the core elements of our delivery. But. So whilst the industry, broadly speaking, has tinkered with a bit of CAFM, so when I started, it was T-cards. It was all very manual. Then we moved to green screen.
Yeah.
The versions of CAFM that we now have. And this is not a dig at CAFM providers, because they've got a mass market proprietary platform, and they can't dictate how organisations are going to work in that last mile, so to speak. But that's what we wanted. We wanted to go under the hood to properly understand how we operated as a business and how we could automate and achieve consistently great levels of service. And we knew that tech was the answer. So we were involved in some research ourselves quite recently that confirmed that 77% of FMs in the UK knew that technology could make a significant difference to their service or their product or for their environment. But less than a quarter effectively knew where to start.
Right.
So unless you know what's available and you're pushing the boundary, you constantly just believe, that what we've got is what we get. So I think vanilla, if I was exampling this, has prevailed through the industry. So, we all fish in the same pond for the, the technical expertise, the engineers, the gas engineers, the plumbers and what have you. So we've got to identify ourselves as something different because we're a smaller, private, agile, more flexible business. But, we still do the same thing in the same way as we ever did. And probably convince ourselves that we're doing better. And if I look, even in the recent past, we've got so much data that our bioservice management platform is giving us now. We intuitively knew what some of the problems were and what we'd need to solve, and they were all operational. How could we actually be slicker and more efficient about what we do? Because fundamentally, we're doing the same thing or very similar things for similar customers. Which we manage the environment and building. So, really getting to grip with how we could make a difference and how we could change things. But we also, if I'm being really honest, we found problems we didn't even know we had.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you share that? I mean, what kind of problems?
Well, if you just, people often people do constantly oversimplify the maintenance market. hugely complex. So you should plan and reactive. You've got engineers that go out and do this, that, and the other. But when you look at the transactional interdependency, to make sure that the right engineer with the right skills and the right qualifications, with the right tools, the right access, the right equipment, the right training, character, all of that stuff has to line up for us to be right first time, every time. And it's inordinately complex. So there's it was a stark recognition for us. It's just how complex those interdependencies are to get right. And it's, I think our industry probably sweeps a lot of this stuff under the carpet because it is so difficult. So if I was to exaggerate to example, if you like, so you've got a big organization that have come through periods of legacy of acquisition and what have you, with multitude of systems. So for them to digitally transform is a huge transactional risk. It disrupts the business. It takes a lot of time. Not easy. It's taken us, 6-7 years. At the other end of the scale, you've got smaller, more flexible and agile companies by comparison. But they would have no access to the skills or the resources to be able to pay. I mean, we've invested probably over 2 million quid into our bio platform because we know that what we're doing is right, and there's no shortcut. And there might be some of the listeners suggesting 7 years, is that what it's taken? But when I look back, even I thought it would probably be quicker than that. But when you look to automate process, you need to really understand every workflow in your business. So, Josh might, if we had the same task, Josh might do it slightly different from Mary, and Mary might do it slightly different from Claire, but they all got from A to Z. But they did it in slightly different ways. What we had was to say, right, we're going to have to agree a way to this.
Right.
So getting the workflow from A to Z was the tough, time-consuming bit. And what we haven't come out of the box 7 years later with a ta-da, here it is. This has been iterated over the last 7 years. Engineers being involved, customers, planners, that sort of stuff. But, before the end of this year, we'll be releasing, AI and machine learning based automated plan. So bio will be making suggestions to our planners that, Jim should go here and Darren should go there. And if they accept them, the machine continues to learn and become even more proficient. So, I mean, this is really clever stuff that I always thought was on the dream shelf, to be honest. And those dreams are now becoming reality.
It's a really interesting times. I think AI is out there. People know it's there. People not sure how to use it, or I think people are a bit scared of it. AI. I think if we bring in AI, is it going to make my job redundant? How is it going to, how do you kind of sell that to your team, to your staff from the ground up, like from engineers? Does anybody push back and say, oh, we don't need to do this? I'm kind of, Joe the engineer I'm still going to fix the air handling unit or change the filters. How's this going to affect me? How do you kind of sell?
It's a really good question. That symbiosis between people and technology was the subject that Workplace Futures earlier this year. But if there's first off, we've got all our industry, particularly in engineering, has got some fundamental common challenges, and one of those is the skill shortage. So there are fewer and fewer engineers, and more people looking to entice them to come from there to here. That's been exacerbated for a whole bunch of reasons. Some of them because we stopped doing apprenticeships properly, some of them because of COVID, some of them because of Brexit, a whole multitude. But the industry should be looking back and saying that we created some of the problems as well. So what we've been looking at is that fact is not changing. Those resources, those skilled resources are becoming scarcer. So what we've been focusing on is taking away all of that non-technical administrative stuff that our engineers have to do, and engineers typically have to do around our industry. So our engineers are not doing time sheets anymore. They don't have to ring up for a purchase order. All of these little things it's meant that we've trusted them more. So we've enabled them to buy stuff without having to keep ringing up for all of this sort of stuff. If our engineers who are normally in London, going to London to support a customer or to Bio will automatically pay their London waiting. They don't have to apply for it. It just knows where everyone is. So there's been this trade-off between us knowing exactly what engineers are doing all of the time, but then having a positive contribution into what we can do to get more of their time related to their skill. We don't want our engineers skilled but in scarce supply messing about with that. If we can automate that, just take it off them. The guys are recognizing that we are making, their life different. If I look at the challenges we have with newer recruits, the highest level of churn that we have is within the first 2 or 3 months. So I wonder on occasion that there's a level of tech fatigue. We've been talking about technology in M&E for years, in terms of, maintenance and what have you, but it is quite superficial. And I think they honestly believe that engineers, when they start, it's just another version of whatever, as a CAFM platform. But it isn't. This is genuinely an ERP. So all of the financing is automatic, the billing, the invoicing, that every single person in our business has a dashboard. And that dashboard is constantly making them aware of things that they need to do to ensure that interdependency of the transaction that I was talking about earlier on. So everyone knows what's important all of the time for them to do. And we've done exactly the same for our customers. So first off, the data that we see is what our customers do. There's nowhere to hide. There's no shades of grey. There's one version of the truth. Our service partners, they call subcontractors, but our service partners see exactly the same detail. So, we want our service partners to act as if they were our engineers. And if they use Bio to the fullest extent, we can pay them more quickly. It can become paperless in terms of their billing and invoicing. So there's this constant trade-off between giving us the visibility we need to consistently provide better service to customers, but ensuring that we're making people's lives easier as a consequence as well. So that's probably been the best example of how we've brought the people that we still have on the journey with them. But to be honest, it doesn't suit everyone.
Absolutely. Brilliant. That was really, really good, really interesting. And you also mentioned about the skill shortage, which, I know of. I think that's why, I guess, in recruitment we exist as well. It's do you think that the skill shortage will ever be fixed? And if it can, how long is it going to take? Because I think obviously full apprenticeships stops, and then you mentioned Brexit as well, and there's been quite a few factors over the last sort of 10, 20 years. But there is definitely an engineering shortage, and I think we are seeing companies like DMA and other service providers, do provide apprenticeship schemes, which is great. But is that enough? What else can we do?
It's a really good point. I think for the optimist, I do believe we'll sort it. I think it'll be a blend and a combination of attracting people to an industry that's probably been perceived as pretty staid, not tech orientated. I mean, to be honest, delivering parcels uses better technology than we do in M&E, typically across the business, across the UK, I should say. So it's that blend, I think, of attracting and retaining and developing skill, and then seeing it as an attractive, but really leveraging technology so we can make it a more attractive and actually a place to work, rather than, the perception of a gas engineer trudging around with a toolbox and what have you. So we actually wrote a fable to help with this. So I go quite regularly into schools, colleges and universities to share experience, just talking like this, and to talk about specific challenges or whatever. I don't think we always I know we don't always put our industry in the best light. And I think it probably takes a point of getting to a certain time, like you are, getting a bit back. You know, so to go into places where you've got an opportunity to inspire people, you know, to do something different. And you know, so I'm a little about FM or a little about technical maintenance or what it is. You know, our business requires accountants and surveyors, and engineers, and what have you. But you know, there's more than one way to get to your career objectives. Some people take it slower. Some people want to get there yesterday. I never went to university. Half of our board, half of our senior leadership team went through a conventional apprenticeship. Some they went on to do degrees and what have you. So there are different ways to get there. Well, we've got 6 or 7 apprentices. You know, so we're doing our bit. We recognise that's an opportunity, but we've not only got engineering apprentices, we're taking apprentices into the operational hub of our business as well. So sort of training planners and the other activities within our business as well. So I have to be optimistic and say we'll sort it. And I think it will be a blend about making our industry a more attractive place to be and see, as well as technology, making the best of the skills that we've currently got.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've always said that I feel that the FM industry, the maintenance industry, probably needs to focus more instead of trying to plug gaps and just re-recruit. And we've got a gap there. We need to try and attract more people in at a very early stage and go to the schools, go to the universities, and kind of sell the industry. That, you know, I think everyone's on social media nowadays. You feel like every youngster wants to be an influencer or kind of and go from being at home and to being rich in, I don't know, 2 weeks or something. It's kind of you're up against this, you know, and it's difficult. So it's great that you're kind of out there, and hopefully you and other companies do the same. It will eventually kind of the gap, the skill shortage will get smaller, hopefully.
I'm confident we'll resolve the challenge, but it requires a whole industry to make a difference, not just a couple of drop of ink in the swimming pool. The whole industry needs to say we've got a challenge and this is how we're going to address it. And there is stuff underway. So it will take time.
That's good to hear. So you work with some really interesting businesses. You've achieved a lot. How have you been so successful? And what makes people? You've worked with some interesting people, and I know that you kind of have continued to work with some of the same people over the years as well. What makes somebody successful in the FM and maintenance industry? And you mentioned that the board, not many may have gone to uni, and they're kind of all ex-engineers or engineers by trade, and they've come up through the ranks that way, like yourself. What makes that person different? What makes them successful?
I think, you have to be inspired by the sector. You know, I've always liked being involved in the built environment. You know, you look at nice buildings. I appreciate old buildings, you know, mid buildings, you know, whatever. You know, I like the built environment. I like being in cities and what have you. So it's a place about. I did just to example this, but for youngsters really. So I was involved in Lee Academies recently, talking to their T-level students about the decisions, the career decisions they might take. And one particular young person said, "Well, I want to be a project manager." You know, great, but do you want to know what you want to be a project manager in? That it was great to be able to promote thought back in that youngster that there are project management skills that every project manager will need to have, but you've got to really understand the sector. You know, so if you want to be a project manager, you know, in construction or with an M&E project or whatever, you've got to really understand that sector. So you've got to really dig deep. You know, you've got to get in and understand the sector. To my mind, whilst we can do things more quickly, there are really shortcuts to getting to properly understand the sector. Now, I'm not going to say for a second that it takes 45 years to know what you're doing. in every instance. But
Yeah.
there is there's no shortcut every time.
Yeah.
You know, there is no substitute sometimes for putting a bit of graft in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to achieve what your plans are. I think
Mm-hmm.
the other thing for me was is that, and I say to youngsters as well, you know, have a broad direction. Don't set yourself as objectives and plans and outcomes that ends up, you know, creating anxiety. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the one beautiful thing that youngsters have, and they often don't recognize it, is time.
I was going to say it's time, isn't it?
It's time. You know, if you said to anyone, when I say our age, people who are full flat and you're much younger than me, but, you know, if you said to people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, would you like to go back, you know, to 20 or 25 and know what you know now? I mean, I don't know many people that would say absolutely. So just recognize that you've got time. But if it takes you 4 years or 5 years or 10 years longer to get where you want to be, and then you've actually confirmed that it is what you want to do, then go for it. I mean, my youngest brother, Ian, heads up our project and engineering business. Then, you know, if he was not here himself, you know, I know you won't mind me talking about it because he does it himself, but, you know, he didn't shut out a school with the best qualifications. He wasn't really turned on with that environment that, you know, others would determine as the indicator of your success when you come out with that qualification.
Yeah.
But he became inspired with engineering as well. And when he was gifted engineer, you know, project management and what have you, he's particularly good at what he does. But he took a different route and a different time scale, but he got to where he wanted it to be, his pace. So sometimes you know, don't be too hard on yourself. Just have a broad direction.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always had a broad. I remember someone saying to me one time that a business coach, it's never believe in luck. What you should always do is prepare for opportunity. So when opportunities come, just make sure, as far as you practically can, that you're just ready to take them. You know, it's not luck. You're just prepared for an opportunity to arrive. And it was probably one of the single strongest pieces in the life. I don't know.
Yeah. Brilliant. I've got two more questions before we wrap up. Did you have mentors apart from your apprenticeship, obviously, but over the years as a senior manager, shall we say, when you moved into Compass, for example, did you have mentors? What are your thoughts around mentors?
I think they're really important. And when I reflect back now, more important than I gave it at the time. Right. So when I first got involved in consultancy, a guy called Peter Blakely was a massive influence on me, and it's a bit like you know, if you're going to learn to swim, you know, kind of jump in the deep end. And Peter was able to give me all of the life raft and what have you to make sure that I didn't completely sink. So he was an amazing contributor to my outlook in those early formative years. When I joined Compass, a lady called Rowena Edwards, who was our MD, really brought to life for me the management of people. So how you can get lots more from people by engagement. And through that process, so that was a mentor, if you like, true key mentor. But while some of the Compass, the senior leadership team at Compass had access to the business coaches, and I had access to a guy called Mike Smith. And he was my outside. You know, I could go to him with challenges and problems, and he was just a consultant. But you know, he was a wise sage, and just gave me sometimes tools to enable you to deal with challenges of the day. He's passed on now, bless him, Mike, but I still pull out some of the documents every now and again and just think, and you were right.
Brilliant. Oh, that's great. That's great to hear.
I remember when there was one of the old guys that was retiring at the dockyard, so probably about 7 or 8 years older than I am now, Rocco Wells. And he'd been in the dockyard for something like 50 odd years. And at his retirement speech, you know, he got the typical gold clock and all that sort of stuff. And in speech went something along the lines of, you know, for 50 years, you know, I came through that dockyard gate and I did what you told me to do for 50 years.
Yeah.
If only you, so you have my arms and legs and all the rest of it. But if only you asked, you could have had all that as well.
Ah, right. Okay. Interesting. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. And final question then. What advice would you give to anybody who's making their way in this brilliant sector that we're in, whether they're starting out on the tools or whether they're starting out, I don't know, in soft services, what advice would you give them?
One is that you're never going to do it all on your own.
Yeah.
So accept the fact that you're going to need help and support. Surround yourself with people that, are where you want to be. Start thinking and behaving like the people that exemplify who you are, or example where you want to be. So you're not going to do it on your own. You never stop learning, and surround yourself with colleagues, peers, and effectively be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right. I've heard that before. I like it. It's good. Yeah. Brilliant. Steve, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I'm glad that we finally got this date in the diary. So thanks so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
We'll catch up soon.
Thanks so much, Claudio. Look after yourself.
Yeah, you too. Take care.